Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I am nearing the end of the day. I had a crown replaced earlier today, and I actually thought I wasn't going to make any videos at all. And then I came home and I just started filming video here and there, popping out videos, pushing out videos, and just talking nonstop, right? And I'm starting to kind of fade a little bit. So I still have my vlog to do, so I thought I would jump on here real quick and film a little Peterisms video. I can always use a meditation to end my day on. So I thought I would read a few meditations, or one, or we'll see how many we get to. And then I'm going to pop on over to my vlog channel and have a little conversation with y'all. So anyway, a little coffee. I made this coffee on my drama channel video, and the coffee was so bad that I had to go inside and get rid of it and make new coffee. So, since it's getting late in the day, I brought the night, it's like 6:30 right now, I brought the Nightlight Amy Dean book out, and then I also brought the two Melody Beatty books. So, I think I'm going to start with the Amy Dean book, Nightlight, since this video will probably be getting up later, and it is getting later in the day. Let's see. Okay, so today is the 28th. I cannot believe we are almost already through September. Seems like I was just begging for the pool to stay open. Now we're almost to October. Okay, September 28th. When you have shut the doors and darkened your room, remember never to say that you are alone, for God is within and your genius is within. And what need have they of light to see what you are doing? Epictetus. As adults, we may feel very secretive about the ways in which we fall asleep. Some of us may have a nightlight in our room, fall asleep to music, or tightly hug a stuffed animal. Each of these ways is designed to make us feel safer, less alone in the dark. None of us is ever alone, especially at night. The methods we use to fall asleep peacefully are good, but we need to remember there are always three angels that guard our sleep. The first angel is our higher power. The second is the positive side of our minds that believes in us. The third is a gentle, hopeful spirit within. Whether we know they are there during the day isn't as important as knowing they are there at night. We are at peace in our sleep because they are there to watch over us. I know I'm never alone at night. My three angels are watching over me. I'm safe tonight and every night. This is a really interesting meditation, and I've talked about this on my vlog and my other videos, probably over here as well, but I want to show a story again, and this is going to be a little bit of a spiritual story. So for those of you that aren't interested, hey, listen, I totally understand if you leave this video now, but this is an experience that I had on the night that Tucker passed away. So, that night I had gone to my home group meeting, and I was talking about just everything that had happened and how I was really struggling in my life at that point. It just, the accident had happened, and then one of my friends, like their husband got really, really sick, and then another one of my friends, I feel like right now I have like so many friends of mine that I'm very worried about whose parents are memory care units. It was just like one thing after another, and Tucker had been sick. Like the 2 to 3 days previous to that, we were waiting for some test results from the vet. When I went to the meeting that night, Alex was really worried about Tucker. I got out of the meeting, and I'm just kind of giving you this preview of all of this to kind of explain what happened that night after I got home. So when I got out of the meeting, I usually turn off my phone. I don't look at my phone during recovery meetings. And Alex had like texted a bunch of times and called me a bunch of times. I was not aware of that because I was in my meeting. So I called him immediately, and he was like panicked. And he was like, Tucker can't stand up. It's really, really bad. And so we took him to the emergency vet, and that was the night that Tucker passed away. And I was not prepared for it. I still struggle with it to this day. My husband almost can't even talk about it. It just is so upsetting to him. It just was really tough night, and I think it was just like so much had happened over the course of 3 or 4 months. I mean, really, like, unbelievable things, just, I don't know, it was just a lot, right? And I've been a spiritual person for a long time, and I have felt for a very, very long time the power of a higher power in my life. I've done a lot of work on it, though. It's not something that just came naturally to me overnight. It's something that I did a lot of work on. And I'm I'm not preachy about it. I don't, like, I share my story with people if they want to know about it. On this channel, I share if it comes up in a meditation, but I'm not like somebody that, like, I'm like, you need to find Jesus, or I wouldn't, like, God never say that, because I don't even know that I need to find Jesus or what that means, right? I just know I have a higher power in my life. I know there's a higher power and I'm not it. I know that because enough things occur in this world that don't make sense to me, and I don't have any control over those things. You know, like I was sharing in a video not too long ago that a friend of mine that was like one of the original outlaws from the biker gang and had killed people and whatever, and he had like no higher power. He didn't believe in God because he was like, if there was a God out there, like no God would allow me to do the things I've done in my life. He was like full of guilt and was whatever, right? And we were looking out this window in our aftercare group. He's since passed away. He was like such an amazing, amazing man in my life. And did a lot of the artwork that I have in my house, and just was just a fantastic friend. I'll never forget him. And so we both got sober at the same time. I think we were like a month apart, and we both ended up working together in the same treatment facility, and he was in my aftercare group before that and things like that. And I remember we were sitting in aftercare and we were looking out the window, and he was having this conversation with our counselor, and he said, I think I just shared this not too long ago in a video, but he's like, yeah, I don't believe in God or whatever. And our counselor, she was so good. She just was, who was my inpatient counselor, and then she was my aftercare counselor, and we've been just dear friends ever since then. And she said, well, not ever, I mean, we worked together, and then we've been friends through the years, and I still call her on my sobriety date and stuff like that, or around my sobriety date. So we don't keep in touch as closely as we used to, but we still keep in touch, and she's still, I mean, she saved my life. She really did, you know? And so we were looking at this tree, or she had him looking at this tree outside the window. I mean, there's no special tree or anything like that. And she's like, can you make a tree? And he was like, what? I can't even remember how the conversation went, but she was like, can you make a tree? And he was like, I can't make a tree. And she was like, so who makes trees or something like that? And he goes, well, I guess that's my higher power then, the man that makes trees. I mean, he was just so like simple and thoughtful like that, you know? So I'd had this horrible night, came home, we ended up going to the emergency vet and whatever. What was interesting was, I think that might have been my first meeting back, meeting back to that home group, I think after the accident, because I couldn't go for a long time because I was in a back brace, I couldn't leave, you know, things like that, except for to go to doctor's appointments. I think that might have been my first meeting back, but I'm not sure. But anyway, in the meeting, we were talking about, like, faith versus fear, which is a big topic in recovery, you know, the idea of having faith in a higher power. I know there's this misconception that 12-step programs are cults or biblical and whatever, and even though a lot of the language and the literature comes across that way, it's not the case. They're non-denominational programs. You can be agnostic. You can be an atheist and be in a 12-step program. I don't know how that would work for somebody, but you could be, you know. And there's even, like, groups called, you know, all of us agnostics and things. I mean, there's whole groups centered around within 12-step programs, like meetings and things like that, that their whole purpose is just around being agnostic. I think it's a little bit easier when you do have a higher power, but that's just from sitting where I'm sitting. So anyway, we were sitting in this meeting and we were talking, and there was these two guys that years ago, Joe and Charlie, and they did, they like evaluated the basic text of a specific 12-step program, and they're called the Joe and Charlie tapes. And they like literally go through like the entire text, right? And so a lot of people will have like book study meetings and things like that, and part of it, or workshop, and they'll go through these tapes, they'll listen to them and whatever. They do a lot of analogies in them. And I have like heard so many of the tapes, right? Like year to year, I've heard all of them. I don't know that I've heard the entirety. I thought I had, but I guess maybe I hadn't, because it came to this one guy, it's a friend of mine, and he was talking about the wheelbarrow analogy. Now, I never heard about the wheelbarrow analogy, but apparently the wheelbarrow analogy is there's these two guys that are on like this, like the Grand Canyon or like this cliff or something like that, right? And there's a tightrope. And the one guy gets in this wheelbarrow, and he goes over the tightrope and comes back in the wheelbarrow. And he says to the other guy, he says, do you believe that I can make it across the tightrope? I'm not getting this perfect, trust me. If I had my phone, I would like look it up and read it for you guys. But the important piece is like what you take from it. So anyway, he looks at this guy and he goes, do you believe that I can make it back and forth on this wheelbarrow? And the guy's like, this is the difference between belief and faith, right? And he's like, what do you mean? I just saw you do it. Of course I believe that you do it. And he goes, do you have faith that I can do it again? And the guy looks at him and goes, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I have faith that you can do it again. You just did it. And he goes, then get in the wheelbarrow. And for me, it was like, honest to God, it was like this moment for me after everything that was in my head of what had happened and how I felt about the circumstances of my life and everybody affected by it at that moment. Like, I was like, it just was this like moment of clarity for me, right? And I came home that night, you know, after we went to the emergency vet and stuff, and Tucker was gone, and we came home, and I was taking little Boo Radley outside, and I remember like looking up at the sky. I know God is not in the sky, okay? I know my mom is not in the sky, but I look up at the sky a lot and talk to my mom and talk to God. I don't know why, I just do. And so I was looking up, and I was talking to God, and I was basically saying that, like, okay, like, you know, I made this deal with God when I first got sober. I think it was like 3 months sober. And I was sitting in this meeting, and this guy was sharing a story, and it was so boring, and he was like 80 years old, and I thought, is this my fucking life? Like, seriously? Like, is this my life? And I was like, okay, God, if this is going to be my life, if this is what you want from me, okay, then I'm going to stay sober. But I'm going to make something of my life. I'm going to use this as a medium and a foundation to have the most amazing life that I possibly can, and today I do. That doesn't mean that I don't have crap that happens to me in my life. I have the most amazing life though, right? So I was sitting out there, and I was really questioning myself about my faith versus belief. Do I believe that there is a higher power out there? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Am I ready to get in that wheelbarrow? That's a different question. That's a different question. So then how much do I really trust this higher power that I put so much faith in? How much do I really trust God if I'm praying for things 15 times in a row as reminders to God, don't forget? How much do I really trust my higher power if my life goes in this direction and I'm resistant to it, you know, like going against the grain? Like, obviously I really don't trust that God knows what's best for me. Obviously I don't really trust that God has a plan for me. Obviously I don't really want to get in the wheelbarrow. So then what's the point in having a higher power? What's the point in having a God? You know, God, like my mother said, is not a wish granter. My dad has said that to me too, you know? And they both have very different, my mom's passed, but they both had very different beliefs of higher powers and God and things like that, you know? But if God is, you know, my sponsor said this to me, and this was so profound because I was telling her the story, and she said, what's the word that she used? But basically, you don't get to pick and choose when you want God in your life. Like, you can't say, like, oh, God is in that. God did that, right? But then at other times say, no, God's not in that at all. Like, you can't pick and choose, you know, your faith to God, you know? And I see a lot of people do that, and if that works for them, more power to them, but that doesn't work for me. Like, if God is in my life, God is in every aspect of my life. I have to find God somewhere in my life, okay? Whether that's God's holding my hand through something, or whether that's God this or God that. And so, you know, that night, I was just looking at the sky, and I was like, okay, God, maybe I haven't practiced faith as much as you really want me to. And, like, you have to remember, I'm not a Bible person. I'm not a church person. I'm just a spiritual person that feels of the soul, that feels like there's something probably bigger. It's very simple that there's something a lot bigger than me out there that did all this. I have to believe that. For me, it works, at least, right? And I was like, okay, God. So if you are so smart that you can make spider webs and trees, who am I to doubt you? But I want to question everything that you do. And you have to remember all the things that had happened up to that point, right? That I'm like, there's no God if this, there's no God if that. Like, how could a God possibly allow this to happen? How could a God, you know, I was trying to make sense of everything. And that night, I was like, It's time to get in the fucking wheelbarrow. It's time to get in the wheelbarrow and start practicing some faith and putting your hand in God's hands. And that was really the defining moment for me of realizing that faith is something that you have to work towards. Faith isn't just something that you have. And I think I always believe that faith is just something that you wake up one day and you have this really deep, strong faith, in a higher power or God. Like, it just comes out of nowhere. And that's not the case. It's an action. It's something that you have to do, Like George Michael said, you got to have faith, Well, you have to have it, but you have to work for it too, right? I've worked hard on it. I still struggle with it. There's still things that I want to question God and go, hey, God, did you forget this over here? God, what about this over here that happened? Like, that doesn't seem fair to me. Who am I to question that, I'm not God. I don't claim to be God. I don't think I'm God. I know I'm not God. Because if I was God, trust me, I have an amazing life, but some of the things that I've witnessed and that have happened in my life and in other people's lives, no, if I was God, that wouldn't happen. But I've decided to get in that wheelbarrow, even when it's tough. And ever since that moment, like, a lot of people have asked me, like, you sit out here late at night, like, aren't you scared something's going to happen? I never feel that way. I used to. I don't anymore. I look up and I see the moon and I'm like, there's God. I know God's not the moon, right? But I'm just like, God's shining down on me. I think that. I say my prayers and my meditations and my gratitude list sitting right out here in this chair. I do my 10-step inventory every single night, sitting right in this chair. I don't ever feel alone. And I'm not a religious person. But it's comforting to me and I feel safe and I don't feel alone. And my biggest fear in life had been death. And really what I realize now is that death is inevitable for all of us. And it makes me not so scared of it anymore, It makes me not so scared of a lot of things. In recovery, we have the saying that I love. And it's like, if something happens, like, let's see, if a friend you haven't talked to in 20 years that you had a disagreement with calls you up and says, you know what, I was thinking about you today and I really miss you and I want to fight like this anymore. We'll say, like, that's a God thing. That's a God moment, right? Or, if your water heater breaks and you need $1,000 and all of a sudden you get, like, some rebate in the mail for $1,000. Like, that's a God thing, right? That stuff happens all the time to people that I know. Those are God moments. Those are God things. I love those God moments, Some people call them luck. Some people call them blessings. Some people call them coincidences. I like to think that they're God moments. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.